In June, what was supposed to be the final court hearing for the owners of the Bangor Mall accused of violating multiple city ordinances wound up being continued until today. However, after nearly 6 hours of testimony, there's still no ruling. Multiple people took the stand. The owners of companies working with Namdar Realty Group, the company that manages the mall, spoke on their working relationships. The owner of Campbell Construction, which specializes in sewer, water, and storm lines, discussed their work on replacing lines around the property. The owner of the roofing company, Namdar, is working with Williams Construction, discussed their work. Williams Construction found 12 to 16 holes and defects on the roof. The owner of Williams Construction says a lot of protrusions seem to be failing around the building, and their crew found a shocking amount of dead birds in roof drains. The general manager of the Bangor Mall also took the stand. Dawn Lazor handles tenants, contracts, jobs that need to be done. She says it's not the first time dangerous conditions such as potholes around the property have been a problem. Lazor also said a company should start taking down the Bangor Mall sign that needs repairs in the next 10 days. Now, last week we told you local leaders took part in a meeting with prospective developers regarding the future of the Bangor Mall. The ATI group is based out of Iowa, and they're currently working on 2 major mall renovations, including one owned by the Namdar Realty Group.